Insecurity, anxiety, and just generally caring too much about what other people think is one of the biggest reasons for sacrificing your goals or giving up on your dreams or just not fulfilling your true potential. Whether you've been wanting to start a new business or apply for a new position or start a blog or a podcast or upload more videos to YouTube or whatever it is, these fears and these doubts and these sort of concerns about being judged, it's not fun, but they can be overcome. That's why today I'm gonna show you the real secret to success as an entrepreneur and the lessons I've learned over the past 10 years about how to finally stop caring about what other people think about you. So let me show you how it's done. Hey, Adam here. Entrepreneur, marketing strategist, and creator. But more importantly, someone who's also had to battle the fears and the anxieties and the doubts and all of the concerns that come from creating stuff and putting yourself out there. And while I'd like to think that I've got a pretty decent handle on it now, wasn't always this way, and the path that got me here was kind of ugly, and more often than not, I was my own worst enemy. Worrying about things that never actually happened, thinking that other people were thinking about me far more often than they actually were. I've got a funny story to tell you on that in just a minute. And basically wasting weeks and months and maybe even years, simply because of this fear of judgment and this fear of what other people were thinking about me. Now, before I dive into kind of the meat and potatoes of this video, it is important to understand that if you want to do something, if you want to create something, if you have goals and dreams and ambitions and things that you want to go out there and accomplish, well, you are going to need to stand up, you are going to need to get some attention, and therefore it's probably going to come with at least a certain level of criticism or judgment, or maybe not the level of acceptance that you were hoping for. There's a great quote by Aristotle that says there's only one way to avoid criticism. Do nothing, say nothing, and be nothing. So if you want to do something or say something or be someone, you're going to need to stand up, metaphorically. But I do have a couple of things that I've learned over the years that I think will help you. The first of which is to become aware of kind of a cognitive bias or a psychological phenomenon known as the spotlight effect. And essentially what the spotlight effect is it's showing us that, well, we think that other people think about us far more often than they actually are. You see, we as humans have this tendency to overestimate just how much other people are thinking about us, when in reality, they're thinking about themselves. After all, we're all busy people with busy lives, a lot of stuff going on, and if you just think about how much you really think about other people, it's probably not as much as they think that you're thinking about them. I think that makes sense. The point to remember here is that to someone, whoever that is, to you, to me, to anyone else, well, that person, to themselves, is the most important person in the world. Even if they're a truly selfless and caring and kind and considerate person, they still think about themselves more than anyone else, and they naturally have to. It's kind of baked into our DNA. It's how we've survived as long as we have as a species. This is why easily one of the single most important and valuable pieces of advice that I could ever hope to offer you is to simply remind you, and it's been psychologically proven that, well, people just aren't thinking about you as much as you think that they are. So if you mess something up or say something silly or slip or trip or wear something that's not quite right or have your hair done weird, whatever it is, people probably won't notice. And if they notice, they probably won't care, but more on that in a minute too. There's a joke that first appeared back in 1928 about a self-absorbed actor, kind of a narcissist who only really thought about himself. And it says, well, hey, that's enough talking about me. Let's talk about you. What do you think about me? The point of the matter is that people like talking about themselves, which is why if you ever want to appear more interesting than you think you are, well, you simply have to ask someone questions and get them talking about themselves and dig a little bit deeper and be genuinely curious. And you'll find that the conversation will flow pretty easily and pretty naturally. This is why in business and in marketing, we're always trying to use the word you. Because you is the most important word in the entire language, because it's always about you. It's always about the person that you're trying to connect with. In fact, in business and in marketing, pretty much the only time we ever really talk about ourselves at all is in a way that allows us to share a story that would be relatable or be helpful or allow us to connect with someone and sort of allow them to see it from their point of view. So in the end, it's not even really our story, it's their story, but told through us, or you. Now, as an example for just how little people think about us, well, on this YouTube channel alone, I've made over 400 different videos. Some of them have been good, some of them have been bad, some of them have been downright ugly. I've had long hair, I've had short hair, I even buzzed my hair completely off in 2020, and I've worn all kinds of different outfits, including one of the perhaps ugliest or at least weirdest jackets of all time. In fact, I think I've got it around here. Give me a second. Ah, yes. This is the one. And essentially, I wore it in a video, maybe even two, and I wore it kind of ironically and as a bit of a joke, but I completely forgot to mention that I was wearing it ironically, so it really just looked like any other day with any other video. And do you know how many people commented? I think it was one, and it was kind of like, hey, nice jacket. And do you know why? Well, it's because people don't care. And that's awesome. They don't care what you wear or what your hair looks or if you're having kind of an off day or things are a little bit messy. As long as you're there trying to help them, as long as you're there trying to provide value, doing the best that you can, and as long as you're being yourself. I think this thing's made of polyester though, so it's super hot, so I'm gonna take it off now. But even though most people won't care, of course, there's always going to be a few of those kind of more negative people that we know as haters and trolls. And how do you deal with them? Well, if you've ever had someone criticize you or criticize or complain about a movie or a book or a TV show or even a person, typically one of two different things is happening. The first, and by far the most likely culprit, is that it just wasn't for them. They're not the intended audience of that movie or of that book, or they're not the target market of that brand or that advertising campaign or anything like that. It just wasn't meant for them. And that's okay. There's a quote that I like for this, and it goes, "Be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind." And this is true. If people are criticizing and they're not your friends or your family or your potential customers or clients, and they're just random people, well, their opinion really isn't that important, is it? The second culprit or instance where this happens, and is more likely if someone lashes out with really strong anger or violence or hatred or anything like that, is that it's coming from a pretty hurt person. The reality is that well-adjusted people just don't act like that. So if you get some kind of complaint or criticism that just seems unfounded or unnaturally aggressive, your best bet is to try to not take it personal, because it's more of a reflection of the person delivering it than it is on you. There's another great quote that I like here by Mark Twain that says, "Never argue with stupid people. They'll drag you down to their level and then beat you with experience." Anyway, the best way to combat all of this is to really dig deep and to focus and try to act as much as you can as who you are. Now, I'll admit that self-discovery and trying to figure out who you really are and what's really important to you is a lifelong mission, but it's a challenge that's definitely worth pursuing. After all, it's what you say, more importantly, what you do, more importantly than that, who you are. That's really important. Not the presentation or the packaging or the polish or the delivery or any of the superficial stuff like that. You know, the stuff that people actually judge you on. There's a great quote by David Ogilvy, advertising legend, that says, "What really decides consumers to buy or not to buy is the content of your advertising, not its form." Essentially, again, if you're trying to deliver value, if you've got your audience or your intended target market's best interests at heart, you really can't go too wrong. In fact, in many cases, coming off as overly polished or overly perfect, well, it just comes off as being fake or inauthentic, because people aren't like that. We're all a little bit messy with imperfections and idiosyncrasies and quirks and a little bit of weirdness. That's what makes us special. At least that's what my mom tells me. So, what are your values? What makes you you? What do you care about? What makes you unique or different or weird and your true awesome self? Find that, double down on it, and then run with it. No matter what your passion or interest or goal or dream or desire, there are other people out there with those exact same things that are behind you every single step of the way. And those that aren't, well, just remember, they're not your people. it's not for them. And if you do make the mistake of trying to please these other people, well, I've got some bad news, because doing that is one of the fastest ways to fail. There have been a number of different psychological studies done that show that by trying to actively get people to like you, well, it's one of the fastest ways to actually be rejected. Now, I'm not talking about trying to be a good person and trying to be a nice person and trying to be a helpful person, but actively going out there by people pleasing and trying to sort of, again, actively get someone to like you is a surefire recipe to have them not like you. And why is that? Well, it's the same reason that these concepts apply in business and marketing. It's that people can tell when you're needy or when you're desperate, and it just doesn't smell good. It shows a lack of self-confidence, it shows a lack of self-worth, and it shows a lack of sort of belief in yourself and what you're going after. It means that other people are going to have to constantly be there to prop you up and to help you out. And again, they might do it out of a little bit of compassion and sympathy, but it's not a surefire way to build a long-term friendship or relationship or brand or business. But there's other downsides as well, because as long as your happiness, your sense of worth is dependent on other people, well, it's going to be fleeting and it's going to be very chaotic and up and down. You're going to feel good when other people approve of you, and you're going to feel terrible when they don't. So this brings up the next question then, which is, should you care at all? First off, caring about other people is incredibly important, and in fact, it's kind of a core aspect of this entire thing. As well as caring what other people think to a certain extent is also important. Otherwise, the world would just be full of douchebags who just run around doing whatever they want, not caring about who they hurt or who they offend. So that's obviously not what I'm talking about here. Empathy and caring about other people, as well as caring about what other people think, and maybe even feeling a bit of guilt or a bit of shame when you've crossed a line that you know you shouldn't cross, that's important. It helps keep all of us sort of in a good relationship with ourselves, with others, and with the world at large. But it can go too far, and it often does. This often ends up leading people down a path to perfectionism and to being people pleasers and to being really anxiety ridden and hyper vigilant about everything they say and everything they do, and always second guessing everything and procrastinating on their goals and their dreams and always worrying about what other people are going to think, which causes them to stay stuck and stay paralyzed, never taking action, never doing anything, and therefore never accomplishing anything. So what do? How do you walk this fine line? How do you find the balance between not caring what other people think while simultaneously being a good and empathetic and caring person? Well, I've got 3 people's opinions that I'd like to suggest you take to heart. The first, of course, and by far the most important, is your opinion. Are you living your values? Are you doing what's important to you? Are you doing what you say you're going to do? Which means essentially being in integrity with yourself and with what you want to actually do with your life and with your business and with everything you want to achieve. The second group, whose opinions you want to consult, is essentially friends and family that know you really well and that are genuinely good people who have your best interest at heart. And sadly, this isn't always the case depending on your friends or your family. So really make sure that they care about you and that they are objective about your pros and about your cons, or your strengths and your weaknesses, when you're getting feedback. And then, of course, take it with a grain of salt and measure it against what you know and what you believe about yourself. The third group is a group of professionals, whether we want to have them be mentors or coaches or consultants or therapists or counselors or psychologists or whatever it is. Essentially, it's a trained and objective third party who can look at you, who can talk to you, who can try to understand what's important to you and if you're acting in alignment with your values and doing the things that you say you're going to do so that you can achieve what you want to achieve. But I think the biggest secret to all of this, to really not caring what other people think, to really succeeding as an entrepreneur in your life in general, is to constantly be trying to add more value, to constantly be trying to help other people. Because when you know deep down that your intentions are good, that you want to help other people, that you want to share the information that you have and help them succeed and do it in a way that's best aligned with you, well, when other people criticize or complain about that, it just doesn't really matter. Because they just don't understand, or just not for them. So one of the biggest things you can do here then is making sure that you're doing things for the right people. And that means finding your right people, which all comes down to market research. This is why I've got a video linked up right here on how to do target market research and identify your perfect target market. So make sure to check it out now, and I'll see you in the next video. Personal fulfillment, value to market, and profitability. So let me break down each one of those for you now. The first P is personal fulfillment, and this is essentially just how much do you